can start. I have to say the same thing that I always say. Okay, welcome everybody to the first session of our Tuesday discussion in the summer term 2023. It's a great pleasure to have Arshak with us, Arshak Makichyan from Moscow. My name is Christoph Mauch. I'm the director of the Rachel Carson Center, and together with my colleague Dr. Gesa Lüdecke, the director of graduate programs, we are convening and organizing and bringing people to the Tuesday discussion every week during the semester. Environmental practitioners, we call them, sometimes politicians, sometimes people who work in foundations, sometimes farmers, sometimes activists like today. And we're alternating, Gesa and I, and today it's my pleasure, it's my turn to introduce Arshak. And I'm lucky that Vicky Mitsnikova recommended him. And so I got in touch with him, and I'm really intrigued to have you here. Well, Arshak was actually, comes from Moscow, not really, he comes from Armenia, and his family was moving and fleeing over, centuries, if you will, from the Ottoman, starting with the Ottoman Empire. But then when he was 1 year old, his parents had to leave Armenia, went to Moscow. He lived there and studied music, actually, at the Moscow Conservatory. And he graduated from the conservatory, but he said to me just now, there are enough musicians, more than enough musicians in Russia. And so 4 years ago, he decided not to be a musician anymore, but to become a climate activist, because he believed this is much more important at this point. And then something happened on the 24th of February of last year. You all know what happened, but something happened in his life on the same day. He got married on the 24th of February, and he was a well-known, internationally well-connected climate activist at the time. And on the 24th of February, he was speaking to the media about the war, being a famous person in Russia and beyond already. And that led to interview after interview after interview. So he was non-stop being interviewed about both climate questions, which of course they had a lot to do with the fuel, gas, energy, but especially about the war. So being both an anti-war and a climate activist put him in the media all over, and he's been using everything that you can use, from TikTok to Twitter to Facebook, and etc. And even, I think that's the most interesting thing, he was even on, I could believe it, on Fox News. So Fox News, the right-wing American news company, they may not like to talk about climate activism. I think they're more like in the climate deniers team. But as soon as there's somebody who speaks out against Russia, I think they are eager to learn from them. I could talk more about Arshak, but I think I will just tell you that he left Russia before he would have been deported. His family was deported because it's not just, he was actually detained the day after his wedding, and he was released again, and then he gave interview after interview, and he left about 3 weeks after the war started and has been living in Berlin since. I can think of so many questions that we all have for you, because we don't have the knowledge that you have about at this time when there are so many crises that are overlapping, energy, climate, and war. And your perspective is so welcome. So please join me in welcoming our guest from Moscow and Berlin, Arshak.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's really nice in München. I've never been here. Yeah, so I will tell a little bit about myself. Yeah, I'm a climate activist from Russia. I co-organized the first climate movement in Russia and protested against fascist regime. And yeah, I think my knowledge about climate and anti-war activism is very important for Germany and the world. Yeah, my experience and my knowledge. In Europe, climate activism have been protesting against, or for climate action for decades. Yeah, but the situation in Russia was different. I was one of the first climate activists in Russia. And Russia is fourth largest CO2 emitters in the world, and yeah, Russia has huge potential in renewable energy, in climate action. But the only thing it lacks is freedom. And yeah, the situation is like that in many other authoritarian states. And freedom is very important for our fight because yeah, our systems are corrupt and broken. And it's like that not just in Russia. Europe has been financing Putin for decades, yeah. And it still buys fossil fuels from Russia or from other dictatorships like Azerbaijan, which is illegally now blockading Nagorno-Karabakh Republic and yeah, repressing its own citizens. So yeah, it's the same mistake that was done with Russia. And yeah, it's quite obvious that political and climate crises are exacerbating each other. And the stability Europe has faced in the last years, I think, is an illusion. Yeah. And yeah, it's strange for me that European politicians are criticizing Russian civil society for not doing enough to fight Putin. And also, yeah, at the same time, they are finding many excuses to continue to finance Putin and other dictators, yeah, worldwide. And also, they are marginalizing its own climate activists because, yeah, they're not ready for the harsh truth. Yeah. For me, the climate crisis is very connected to fight for freedom and justice. Yeah, as you know, I was deprived of my only citizenship and I am now stateless. Yeah. And also my family has been deprived of their citizenship and they were deported from Russia. And with order from FSB, with ban entry for 50 years, just because of my activism. And I didn't do anything illegal. I was just telling the truth. I was just openly opposing the war. Yeah. And yeah, I wanted to bring changes to Russia because otherwise we won't have a future, yeah? Because it's a global crisis. That was why I decided to stay in Russia in 2019, despite my plans to continue my violin career in Europe, to continue my education. I wanted to make a difference. And of course, we shouldn't forget about Russian influence in the region. Russia here has huge influence for the policies in Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Kazakhstan, and in many other countries. And if we want to have peace in the region, to have peace and prosperity and climate action, we need to stop Putin. And for that, we need to help the Russian anti-war movement, which is mostly left alone in foreign countries now, or to help the Russian partisanship movement. They are also doing very important work. It's of course illegal, you can call it terrorism, but the law in Russia is fascist. So I think it's their right to do whatever they think is right to do, and we have to try to support them. And I am more privileged than many other activists, yeah, because I speak English. I was part of international climate movement. I have a lot of friends in here, which is not the case for many other activists, and they are doing very important work. And it's strange for me to hear news like a lot of activists are getting refuses from European consulates to get visas to travel to here. And also I saw an official answer from German consulate to Russian with a reason for refusal that he can try to escape mobilization in here, which is quite insane. And also I'm reading and seeing people like so-called peace activists, and they're calling for peace with Putin, but their peace means a genocide in Ukraine and mass repressions in Russia. And of course, no climate action on needed scale in whole region and probably the world, because their peace entails global militarization, because it won't be safe to live in the same world with insane men in power in Russia. And I think, yeah, it's quite obvious that with this connection between human rights crisis and climate crisis, and like for me, it's impossible to imagine climate negotiations with Russia now, yeah, at COPs 27, 28. It's impossible to negotiate with Putin, like to negotiate about peace with him after the war in Chechnya, then in Georgia, then in Ukraine, and in Syria. What happened in Syria was terrible. Putin is worse than ISIS, yeah? And then this genocide in Ukraine, we should call it what it is, yeah? I cannot imagine anything. any negotiations with Putin. We need to bring changes to Russia, and for that we need to do strategic work, which is not done now for now. European politicians, they are mostly ignoring Russian anti-war movement. They are continuing to call Putin. They are hoping for miracles, but there is no work being done. Yeah, they're just talking, and yeah, there is embargo, and we were demanding embargo, and there is embargo, and it's very good. But we need to have a real plan, a real strategy to do that. And for that, of course, we need to unite. We need to combine our knowledges, experiences, because yeah, in Europe, yeah, you're more educated than we are. I graduated from Moscow Conservatory. I'm not a professional politician, and I'm not a professional activist. But yeah, I have knowledge of Russia, of our region. I speak Russian, of course, but if we want to stop Putin, we need to do much more. It's a long-term crisis, as the climate crisis is. Yeah, we cannot like buy, new things like to change to electric cars and to stop climate crisis. It's much more complicated, and Russian crisis is much bigger than Russia. Yeah, so I think we need to discuss it, and I will be happy to answer your questions because, yeah, I think it's very interesting discussion. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.